Okay, on to unit rates. And one thing you got to know is, what is a unit rate? So right off the bat, let's say a rule. A rule is, unit rate is 1 in the denominator. It is something per 1. It is a number per 1. So it's dollars per 1 hour, or number of miles, like 50 miles per 1 hour. It's per 1. Dollars per 1 hour, miles per 1 hour, or it could be dollars per 1 ounce or dollars per 1 pound. Anything per 1 will give you the unit rate. Unit rate is per 1. And another rule, just generally, it's money on top and time on bottom. So you have dollars per pound, dollars per hour if you're working, dollars per ounce, and time on bottom, miles per hour. Or you can have, gallons per hour if you have a question like of a leaky pipe. Just remember, it's money is generally on top and time is generally on the bottom. Is this like dividing by 0? If you do it the other way, the world explodes? No, it's okay. But just generally as a convention, money will be on top and time will be on bottom. All right, on to question 1. A crew of highway workers paved 2/15 of a mile in 20 minutes. If they work at the same rate, what portion of a mile will they pave in 1 hour? And you're like, okay, well, that's easy. Wait, it's tough because we have minutes and then we have hour. So that's one big issue we're going to have to deal with right away. We're going from 20 minutes to an hour. We're looking for a unit rate because it's per 1 hour, but we go from minutes to 1 hour, which can trick people up. So let's just do this out with tape diagrams so we're super clear. 1 hour is 60 minutes, and that can be thought of as 20 minutes plus 20 minutes plus 20 minutes. So 20 minutes will be, if you look at it this way, it's easy, 1/3 of an hour, right? There's 3 20-minute blocks in a 60-minute hour. Okay, but if you want to look at it another way, because it's not always going to be so simple that it can be 20, 20, 20, right? 20 minutes equals 1/3 of an hour because 20 over 60 equals 1/3. You can put 20 minutes over 60, right? Because this is minutes per the 60 minutes that is an hour. So if you have, for example, 7 minutes, that is going to equal 7 over 7/60ths of an hour. And if you have 5.5 minutes, that is going to equal 5.5 divided by 60 hours. Right? You can put it over 60. 20 over 60 equals 1/3 to get from minutes to an hour. It's the same as just dividing by 60, but looking at it as a fraction, you put it over 60. Okay, so that hopefully will give us some help. But we still have the problem to do. All right, let's do it. Crew of highway workers paved 2/15 of a mile in 20 minutes, and 20 over 60 is 1/3. Okay, so miles per hour, time goes on bottom. If they work at the same rate, what portion of a mile will they pave in 1 hour? All right, so here we go. We have a regular setup. You might remember this from last year from 6th grade where you have whole numbers everywhere. Well, now we have fractions, but it's the same deal. We're going to cross multiply and divide. We're going to have 2/15 times 1, which is the same as times 1 over 1, divided by 1/3. And that's going to equal, well, this is times 1 just keeps it the same, right? So we have 2/15 divided by 1/3. How do we do 2/15 divided by 1/3? Well, if you remember, we just keep, change, flip, right? So that's 2/15, we keep it. We change division to multiplication, and we flip 1/3 to 3 over 1. What do we get? 2 times 3 is 6. 15 times 1 is 15. And if we, simplify, dividing the numerator and the denominator by 3, we're going to get 2/5. So there we go. 2/5 is going to be our answer. Some of you might say, well, I know how to make this this 1, and I can just do what some people call the bottom top approach. I know how to make 1/3 1. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. I'm going to multiply by 3 over 1, which is otherwise known as the reciprocal. And if I multiply by 3 over 1 on the bottom, I got to multiply by 3 over 1 on top. Well, that's actually kind of what we did, right? We multiplied by 3 over 1, 2/15 by 3 over 1. So if you do, either way you do it, you're going to get the same answer. You're going to multiply 3 over 1. I like the cross multiplication and division. If you really want to make sure you're doing it right, I think that's an easy way to do it and a way to make sure, have confidence, have a high degree of confidence you're doing it right. Or you can do it both ways as a way to check your work. But either way you do it, you're going to get 6 over 15, which is going to reduce to 2/5. And you're going to pave 2/5 of a mile in 1 hour. Next question, question 2. The label on a 1 1/2 pound bag of wildflower seeds, oh how nice, states that it will cover an area of 375 square feet. Based on this information, what is the number of square feet that a 1 pound of wildflower seeds will cover? Okay, so we have 1.5 pounds covers this amount. How much is 1 pound going to cover? Right off the bat, you know your answer. And that's because you can use estimation. And we're going to go through this problem to make sure we know how to do it precisely. But, I mean, if you have 1.5 pounds, and if that equals 375, you know that 1 pound is going to equal a little less than 375, right? 1 pound is going to equal a little less than 375, and this is a huge amount less, this is a little less, this is more, and this is way more. So you know your answer is going to be B. But, you know, what if this wasn't an A, B, C, D, you know, multiple choice question? What if this was a, you know, a free response or a constructed response problem? We should go through it. But just, I mean, as a way, or a way to check your answer, use estimation. If 1.5 pounds is going to get you 375, you know 1 pound is going to get you a little less than 375, which is going to, 250 is your only reasonable answer. Well, let's go through it. First, what are we to make of 1.5? We are good when we have fractions. We are good when we have decimals. But when we have mixed numbers, what does that mean? So again, 1.5 pounds, you can think of it as this. You have a whole and then you have a half. So how many halves do you have? Well, you have 2 halves here and you have 1 half here. So 2 halves plus 1 half is 3 halves. And if you want to run the algorithm, you can say 2 times 1 is 2, multiplication, and then add across plus 1 is 3. So the algorithm, or the formula, is multiplication of the denominator to the whole number plus the numerator. 2 times 1 gets you 2, plus 1 will get you 3. So 1 1/2 equals 3 halves. 1 1/2 equals 3 halves. And that kind of makes sense, right? Because how many halves do you have? You have 1 half, 2 halves, 3 halves, and they're all halves. So 1 1/2 equals 3 halves. All right, so let's plug that in. Square feet per pounds. Square feet per pound. You have 375 square feet for 1 1/2 pounds, which is the same as 375 square feet for 3 over 2 pounds. So how many square feet are you going to get per 1 pound, right? Because that's what the question's asking. Let's use our cross multiplication skills again. We have 375 times 1 divided by 3 over 2. Well, 375 times 1 is just 375. And you can think of that as 375 over 1, because any number divided by 1 is that same number. And then we're going to have that divided by 3 halves. How do we divide by a fraction? We're going to keep, change, flip, keep, change, flip. So we're going to keep this as 375 over 1. We're going to change division to multiplication, and we're going to flip this to from 3 halves to 2/3. And what do we do now? We just multiply on top. 375 times 2 is 750. Divided by 3 is going to equal 250. So there we go. That's our answer, 250. Again, you can multiply by the reciprocal if you want. Multiply by 2/3. Multiply by 2/3. That's the same way. That will get you 250 as well. But if you do it out through cross multiplication, you're still going to get 250, which is our answer. But we already knew that through estimation. On to question 3. How convenient! Question 3 is going to allow us to review some of the math that we did in questions 1 and 2. That's nice. Miss Graves gave her class 12 minutes to read. Carrie read 5 1/2 pages in that time. At what rate in pages per hour did Carrie read? Okay, so we have pages per hour, and we have 5 1/2, and hours 12 minutes. Oh, another trick. Minutes to hour. But we know how to do that trick, right? Because we just divide by 60. We say 12 minutes is 12 over 60. All right, so here we are. We have pages per hour, and we want to get that to, if we read 5 1/2 pages in this amount of time, 12 60ths, how much are we going to read in 1 hour? Well, first, let's just simplify this, right? Because 12 60ths, we can, divide. If we're not sure that 12 goes into 60, we can just start out slowly and divide each by 6. And we'll get, this is 2 over 10. Oh, I know what we can do. We can divide by 2 again and get 1/5. Some of you will know that 12 goes into 65 times to begin with, and you'll be like, oh, let's just divide by 12, divide by 12, we'll get 1/5 right off the bat. Otherwise, you can do is you can go step by step and be like, oh, I'm going to go slowly and divide first by 6, then by 2. And here, up here, pages, we want to get this into a workable number. Well, 5 1/2, let's think about this as, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wholes, and then we have a half. So we have 2 over 2, 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 and then 1 over 2. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 over 2. We have 11 halves. 11 halves. And we know that because we do the whole number, the whole number multiplied by the denominator, so it's 2 times 5 plus 1. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11, so we have 11 over 2. How does that make sense? Well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 2 5 times plus our last one. So that's how we get 5 1/2 into 11 over 2. And then we have 11 over 2 over 1/5, and we have to make that equal something over 1. How do we do it? Cross multiply. 11 over 2 times 1 divided by 1/5. We should know by now that any number times 1 is that same number. So we can just say 11 over 2 times 1 is 11 over 2 divided by 1/5. How do we do that? Keep, change, flip. 11 over 2, keep, change, division to multiplication. Then we flip 1/5 to 5 over 1. And we multiply it through. We get 55 over 2. 55 divided by 2. Well, 2 goes into 55 27 times with 1/2 left over. 2 goes into 55 27 times with 1/2 left over. So that'll be our answer, 27 1/2. Also, I mean, we have, it just has to be said, we have pages per hour. We have 5 1/2. We could just convert that to 5.5. And we have 12 divided by 60. If you do 12 divided by 60, you will find it comes out to 0.2. So you can just convert these fractions into decimals and then do a little cross multiplication like this, 5.5 times 1 divided by 0.2. Plug that in your calculator and you're going to get 27.5, which is the same as 27 1/2. So it has to be said that instead of going through all this brain damage with the fractions, you can just convert them into decimals right off the bat and get the same answer. But either way you do it, or if you want to do it both ways to check your work, you're going to get 27 1/2, and we're good to go. On to question 4. This one's kind of easy. A recipe requires 1/3 cup of milk for each 1/4 cup of water. How many cups of water are needed for each cup of milk? So we have water per milk. We know that for 1/3 cup of milk, we need 1/4 cup of water. How much water do you need for 1 cup of milk? Again, let's just do a little cross multiplication and division. 1/4. Let's do it so we can see it. 1/4 times 1 divided by 1/3, right? Because you cross multiply and divide. 1/4 times 1 divided by 1/3. So 1/4 times 1 is just 1/4. Divided by 1/3. Well, how do we do that? Let's keep, change, flip. We keep, we change to multiplication. We flip. 1/3 becomes 3/1. We multiply through and we get 3/4. So if we were to have 1 full cup of milk, we would need 3/4 cup of water. Again, if you wanted to just multiply by the reciprocal, you get the same answer. But I go through the steps of cross multiplying and dividing, and I get 3/4. Okay, question 5. Question 5 is a horrible, no good, poorly written question. Sometimes on tests, like the one you're going to take, you have to deal with horrible, no good, poorly written questions. You can't avoid them, you just got to do your best. So let's just do our best on this one. Gary bought 3.5 pound bag of cat food every 3 weeks. Good for Gary. That's a happy cat. Gary feeds his cat the same amount of food each day. Which expression can Gary use to determine the number of pounds of cat food his cat eats each year? And 1 year equals 52 weeks. All right, so instead of actually getting a number, we need to get an expression, which is okay. We'd be good at doing that, but you'll see as we go through that the actual answers are written in a weird way. But let's do it. We have pounds per weeks, right? And we have, I'm going to set up a proportion. We have 3.5 pounds, because it says 3.5 pounds for every 3 weeks, so 3.5 pounds per 3 weeks. And another way of writing 3.5, we have 3 wholes and then a half, is we do the multiplication through. 2 times 3 is 6. Multiplication through, then we add, and we get 7/2, right? Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 halves. 3 and 1/2 is equal to 7 halves. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. We have 7 halves. So we have 7 halves pounds per 3 weeks. How much do we need for 52 weeks? And if you had a calculator, you could turn this into 3.5 and turn this into 3.5, multiply it by 52, divide by 3, get a number, and do that same thing for all of these and figure out which one's right. And that's a good way to check your answer. But let's do it as the problem sets it up for us, how the problem writer wants us to do it, whoever that person might be. So we have this, and we're looking for how many pounds do we get for 52 weeks, right? Because that's how many pounds per year. How many pounds do we get for 52 weeks? And we cross multiply. 7/2 times 52 divided by 3. Okay, and we look at our answers, and that should be an answer. That 7/2 times 52 divided by 3 should be an answer. And we don't see it exactly in that form. So let's kind of turn it into the form they're looking for. But then this is where the problem gets, I think, kind of goes off the rails and is just poorly written. What the problem writer wants us to recognize is 7/2 times 52 is the same as times 52. Ooh, that became 53 all of a sudden. Let's just keep it 52. Okay, 7/2 times 52 is the same as times 52/1. And divided by 3 is like divided by 3/1. And if we keep this whole thing here, change, flip, that becomes 7/2 times 52/1 times 1/3. We have 7/2 times 52/1 times 1/3. And if we just go through the trouble of keeping 7/2 by itself, and we use the commutative property of multiplication, it doesn't matter what order we multiply in, and we just multiply these two together, we have 52/3. So we have 7/2 times 52/3, and that will give us our answer, right? Because that's good legal math. we turn divided by 3 into multiplied by 1/3. That's good legal math. Divided by 3, keep, change, flip, equals multiplying by 1/3. You know, that's totally good legal math. Divided by 3 equals multiplying by 1/3. And if we do that, and we forget about the first, you know, fraction, we only do the second two fractions in the 3 fraction set, we get 7/2 times 52/3, which is indeed one of our, you know, answers. Again, I don't like it, but it is the right answer there. So your answer is going to be A. Okay, question 6. The elevation at ground level is 0 feet. An elevator starts at 90 feet below ground level. After traveling for 15 seconds, the elevator is 20 feet below ground level. Which statement describes the elevator's rate of change in elevation during this 15-second interval? All right, so let's draw it out. It's always helpful to draw these out. Whatever you have above ground level, below ground level, just draw it out. It's so much easier if you draw it out. So the elevator starts, well, the elevation at ground level is 0 feet. The elevator starts at 90 feet below, so negative 90, and goes, travels for 15 seconds. It doesn't say up or down, but it ends at negative 20 feet, 20 feet below ground level. So it obviously traveled up. And when you draw it out, when you try to do it, you know, algebraically, it can get kind of messy. But if you just draw it out, obviously it traveled up 70 feet, right? You started at negative 90 or 90 below. You ended at 20 below. So you're going to go up 70 feet, right? Don't let these negative numbers, you know, spook you. If you just draw it out, you can see if you started here and you ended up here, you go up 70 feet. So if you look at your answers, you know, the elevator traveled upward. Okay, that's okay. The elevator traveled upward. That's okay. The elevator traveled downward. No, it's not going to travel downward. The elevator traveled downward. No, that's not going to be right. So A or B is still in play, and C and D is out of here. All right, so just drawing it out, you know, helps us get going on this problem. So how many seconds did we travel? 15 seconds, right? We traveled for 15 seconds. And how many feet did we go up? Well, we went up 70 feet, right? Because the difference between negative 90 and negative 20 is 70. You just think of that logically. It takes 70 to get from negative 90 to negative 20. Okay. Which statement describes the elevator's rate of change in elevation during this 15-second interval? And we're looking for feet per second, right? Because all our answers are feet per second. And that kind of makes sense because we're doing unit rates here in 7th grade. So let's cross multiply and divide. 70 times 1 divided by 15. If we plug that into our calculator and we look at our answers, we're going to be like, oh, well, you know, you're going to know your answer. But it's looking for it in not decimals, it's looking for it in fractions. So we can do it that way. We can think of 70 times 1 as just 70 divided by 15. We can keep, change, flip. We can think of 15 as 15 over 1. We can think of 70 as 70 over 1. And we can change division from division to multiplication. And we can flip that. So it becomes 70 over 1 times 1. Oh my gosh. 70 over 1 times 1 over 15. Right? Keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip. We're good to go. And we get 70 over 15. And we're like, hey, both of these are divisible by 5. And we divide them by 5, and what is that? 12, 14 over 3. And we say, hey, 3 goes into 14 how many times? Well, that goes in 4 times. What's left? 3 times 4 is 12, so 2 would be left. 4 2/3. Yep. 4 2/3. Yep. And 4 2/3. There we go. Question 7. A recycling plant processes an average of 1/3 ton of glass each minute. At approximately what rate does the recycling plant process glass in tons per day? And it tells you 1 day as 24 hours. Okay, so how do we do this? We're given tons per minute, and we need to go to tons per day. So how do we do this? This looks tough. This looks, oh my gosh, is it impossible? How do we do this? Well, first, let's go from tons per minute to tons per hour, And then once we do that, we can say, well, once we know per hour, if we get per 24 hours, that's per 1 day, right? Because it tells us 1 day is 24 hours, as if we didn't already know. So let's first get tons per hour. How many hours are there, or how many minutes are there in an hour? 60. So if we say if 1/3 ton per minute, how many tons per 60 minutes? That will give us tons per 1 hour. That makes sense, right? If we have 1/3 ton per minute, we cross multiply. And we're going to get tons per 60 minutes, or tons per 1 hour. If we do this, cross multiply, 1/3 times 60 is the same as 1/3 times 60 over 1. And if we do that, we get 1/3 times 60 equals 60 divided by 3 equals 20, right? And we have 20 divided by 1 is still going to be 20. So we have 20 tons per 60 minutes, or 20 tons per 1 hour. So how many tons per 24 hours? Again, all we gotta do is cross multiply and divide. 20 times 24 divided by 1. We get 480 divided by 1, or just 480. It's a two-stepper, but if you break it down, you can get it fairly simple. The answer is C, 480. Okay, question 8. A pine tree measured 41.5 feet tall. Over the next 7.5 years, it grew to a height of 57 feet. During the 7.5 years, what was the average yearly growth rate of the height of the tree? Show your work. Oh, we're on the constructor responses. What fun. Okay, so what do we have? We have a tree that originally is 40.5 feet, and it grows to 57 feet. I would draw it out as in a picture, because when you do that, I think it makes it clearer of what you want to get. You want to get, and over here, this is 7.5 years. So it goes from here, 7.5 years later, it's up there. We want to get the average height growth per year. So what would that be? That would be the difference between 57 and 40.5. Or that would be 57 minus 40.5. If you want to turn that into a decimal, you can, or if you want to just do it with fractions and mixed numbers, you can. You are going to get 16.5. You're going to get 16.5. 40.5 plus 16.5 gets you to 57. So however you want to do that out, you're going to get 16.5 is the difference between the tree as it once was and the tree 7.5 years later. Okay, so the next part says, well, if you grew 16.5 feet in 7.5 years, how much did you grow on average per 1 year? What is your unit rate of growth, right? Unit rate, unit rate, unit rate. 16.5 is to 7.5 as what is to 1? Well, since we set it up like this, it's fairly simple. We're just going to cross multiply and divide. 16.5 times 1 divided by 7.5. What do we get? We plug it into our calculator, and we're going to get 2.2. And that is our answer, 2.2. 2.2, and we want to be very clear about it so we get full credit. We get 2.2 feet per year on average. Okay, question 9. Ruby's Market sells smoked meats by the pound. The prices for several different meats are shown in the table. There's a table. Exciting stuff. And delicious. How much more does 1 1/4 pounds of beef cost than 1 1/4 pounds of turkey? So we're dealing with beef and turkey. Okay, so first, let's just review how to think about 1 1/4. Right, 1 1/4. How are we to conceive of this? We can think of it as 1 plus 1/4, right? And if you do it that way, you think of it as how many quarters here? We have 4 quarters. plus 1/4. So that's going to equal 5/4, right? 5/4. So you think about the algorithm or the formula. 4 times 1, well, I guess you just should write times. 4 times 1 gets you 4, plus 1 gets you 5, and you keep the denominator the same. You can also think of 1 1/4 as 1.00 plus 1/4. And what is 1/4 to 100? Well, times 25 times 25. Oh, 25, right? And that makes sense because 1/4 is 25 cents. So you can think of 1 1/4 as 1 plus 0.25, because that's 25 hundredths, or 1.25. And we're going to solve this problem both ways just for completeness, but we're going to think of 1 1/4 as 5/4 or 1.25. All right, so let's do it. We're told that we need to get 1 1/4 of beef and 1 1/4 of turkey, and the beef costs more than the turkey, right? Beef is $4.25, turkey is $4.85. So the 1 1/4 of beef, how much more does that cost? How much more does that cost? It's important to read these questions carefully because we don't just want to give them how much they cost together, or another. We don't want to answer another question. We don't want to say how much would it cost to buy 1 1/4 of beef and 1 1/4 of turkey. We want how much more does 1 1/4 of beef cost than 1 1/4 of turkey. All right, so first, let's find out how much does 1 1/4 of beef cost, right? And we're going to solve this two ways. We know for beef up here, we know for beef, we know that $4.25 for 1 pound, right? $4.25 per pound. So how much does that equal for 1 1/4? Let's cross multiply. 4.25 times 1.25 divided by 1. Plug that into your calculator and you're going to get $5.3125. We can't round yet. We can't round yet, right? All right, or if you want to do it the other way, you would again just cross multiply. You could do 4.25 times 5 divided by 4. So that would be times 5 divided by 4. You're going to get the same number. Okay, next one. Turkey, $2.85, right? Turkey, $2.85. We're looking for 1 1/4. We're looking for 1 1/4. Let's cross multiply. 2.85 times 1.25 divided by 1. All right, plug that in your calculator. You're going to get 3.5625. 3.5625. Again, you can do it with the improper fraction. That would be 2.85 times 5 divided by 4. And just to be really clear about what I'm doing here, if I plugged in my calculator, what I'd do is 2.85 times 5, then divided by 4, right? Because you times 5, then you divide by 4. So times 5 divided by 4. Try it out if you want. What fun. 3.5625. Okay, so we have our numbers. We have for the beef, we'll just say the beef down here, we'll rewrite it. For the beef, we have 5.3125. Make sure you double check your numbers when you rewrite them from one part of your answer to another. I see a lot of mistakes when kids do that, especially after they've been doing a really difficult test for several minutes, multiple hours. They can make simple mistakes when they just write a number from one part of their test to another. So make sure you're doing it correctly. All right, beef and then turkey. We do a little subtraction. And what do we find? 1.75. $1.75 is the difference. $1.75 is the difference. Okay, part 2. So we'll write that in there. Okay, part 2. Brad has $10 to spend. He orders a 1/2 pound of sausage and 1 1/4 of chicken. How much money will Brad have left after he pays for the order? So here we're adding them together. All right, so how much does sausage cost per pound? There we go, $3.25. He wants 1/2 pound. So let's just cross multiply and divide. Cross multiply and divide. 3.25 times 0.5 divided by 1. We plug that in. What do we get? We get 1.625. If we do it out the other way, what are we going to get? If we do 3 cross multiply this way, we get 3.25 times 1 divided by 2. We're going to get the same answer, 1.625. All right, on to chicken. How much does chicken cost? $2.50. And we're getting a pound and a quarter. We already know a pound and a quarter equals 1.25 or 5/4. So $2.50 cross multiply. 250 times 1.25 divided by 1. Plug that in your calculator. You're going to get 3.125. We do it out the other way. We do, again, cross multiply. We get 250 times 5 divided by 4 divided by 1. We're still going to get 3.125. Okay, $10 minus 1.625 minus, again, 3.125. All right, so let's do it out. How are we going to get the answer? How are we going to get the answer? Well, if we just plug it into our calculator, that's easy enough. So let's do that. 10 minus 1.625 minus 3.125. What do we get? We get 5 1/4. 5 1/4. That's what's left after he paid for the half pound of sausage and paid for the pound and a quarter of chicken. 5.25 is left. Where do we get the 10 that we subtracted these numbers from? We got the 10 from here. It says he had $10 to spend. There we go. Part 1, 1.75. Part 2, 5.25. On to question 10. A convenience store sells 2 brands of orange juice. Brand A contains 8 fluid ounces and costs $1.28. Brand B contains 12 fluid ounces and costs $1.68. What is the difference in cost in dollars per fluid ounce between the 2 brands of juice? Show your work. And this is a classic, what is the better buy? Use unit rates to compare 2 products problem. This is always going to be on the test. All right, so brand A, dollars per fluid ounce. You have $1.28 per 8 fluid ounces. So you do a little cross multiplication, 1.28 times 1 divided by 8, because it says $1.28 for 8 fluid ounces in brand A. And what do you get after you do the math? You get per ounce, you get dollars of 16 cents. 16 cents. Brand B, you have $1.68 for 12 fluid ounces. So you have $1.68 for 12 fluid ounces. Again, dollars on top, as is the convention. Do a little cross multiplication. 1.68 times 1 divided by 12. And what will you find? You will find 0.14, 14 cents per fluid ounce. What does the question ask? The question asks, what is the difference in cost? So the difference in cost is $0.02. The difference in cost is, this is brand A, this is brand B, this is the difference. The difference is 2 cents.